everyone's time. Good evening. My name is Sarbeth Fleming, and I am the co-chair of SACAC's Committee on Inclusion, Access, and Success. And tonight, well, today, depending on what time, where you're logging in from all over the world, or when you're watching it, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, we will talk about the college essay. And to give you a little bit of background about myself, I have worked in college admissions for 21 years, both on the college side as well as the high school side. And so essays, they have been my life for 21 years. So I love talking about it. And I will turn it over to Deb so that she can introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Sarbeth. So my name is Deb Ryan. I'm actually now an independent educational consultant. I was a teacher since the early 90s. I feel like that was the dark ages. And I've taught every grade from pre-K through college, except ninth grade. I never taught ninth grade, but primarily I worked with seniors and I worked on college essays. And it's my absolute favorite part of the process.
And so just to let you know, there is a chat feature as well as a Q&A feature. Feel free, if you have questions, to put it in the Q&A portion of this webinar, and that way we can address your questions there. But we will go ahead and get started on what is the purpose of the college essay. The college essay is a part where over the years I've seen students really stressed, right? And say, what should I write about? What makes a good college essay? And I'm sure Deb has heard that question so many times.
Just today.
Exactly. So what makes a good college essay? Well, it's truthfully being your authentic self. Who are you? No one can write your personal statement. And so what makes a strong personal statement, a strong college essay, is if you are true to who you are as a person. Something that we always say in the college admissions office, if you write an essay and forget to put your name, can your friends, can your family members still pick up that essay and say, oh, this must be Deb's essay because I know her voice. And you must show who you are. Nothing you can write will satisfy all people who are going to read your essay. But what you can do is truly write about who you are as a person. Your college essay is the part of your essay that gives the reader insight as to how you are going to add to the, not only into the classroom, but into the residence hall, to student government, to the tutoring programs that they have. So that essay is a way that they can understand just a snapshot, right? Because it's not so long, it's not a novel, but a snapshot of who you are as a person. And writing a strong personal statement, I'm so glad you're joining us tonight because it takes time. Working on the high school side, I saw students who would say, hey, Miss Fleming, I'm about to start my essay. I'm like, okay, when is it due? And I'm like, tomorrow. Can you write one in less than 24 hours? Sure. Will it be a strong essay? Absolutely not. Will it be a beneficial essay to your college process? Absolutely not. So I'm glad that you're here tonight so that, or this morning, whenever you read this, I'm going to just stick with night. I'm glad that you're here tonight to really get a sense of what you can start doing to write a strong essay. Deb, anything you want to add to that?
I would actually just literally, as one of my students today asked me, you know, what makes my essay strong? And I said, she's already written one. And I said, it's you, it's completely you, it's beautiful. And I think when students ask the question, what do college admissions offices want to see? What I tell them is the more you try to write what you think other people want, the less your essay is actually going to be wonderful and about you. So it's really just telling your story. Your story is right for you, and that's the story that's right for everyone else as well.
Absolutely.
Let's see if I can, there we go. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to get started. That was just some great visuals on writer's block. This is really, where do you start? I think this is the part that can be paralyzing for students a lot of time. It's just, I don't even know where to begin. One of the things I think that's helpful to think about is that your first draft is going to be messy. And what I like to equate it to is if you've ever watched someone make a piece of pottery, the very first thing that happens is it's a big lump of clay and there are pieces sticking out and it doesn't look like anything yet. And so that first lump of clay is your first draft. And it's okay for it to be messy, for it to be disorganized, for the grammar to be completely incorrect, for it to have no punctuation. It's really just getting started is the first step. And I think that these are sometimes some of the great questions that you can ask, which are, who are you? Really, it's a kind of fundamentally difficult question that I think sometimes teenagers are really good at taking pictures of themselves, but not talking about themselves. So who do you feel like you are? If you had to describe yourself in just a few words, what would those words be? What are you really proud of? What things matter to you? I think that what moment has mattered most to you is a really wonderful question, because it doesn't necessarily have to be from high school, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge moment, kicking the winning field goal. It can be a little moment that was really, really special to you. Who are your favorite people? What have been some obstacles that you've had to overcome? What makes you worried? What makes you excited? All of these kinds of questions, just brainstorming, really getting started with all of those different kinds of questions can help you start to understand, who is the person that I want to get across? Most colleges are not going to have the opportunity to interview you. So admissions officers are not going to get to meet you in person, which would be wonderful if they could. This is your chance to introduce yourself and to become a whole person in their eyes.
Absolutely. This is it, and it what's great, and what I used to tell my students, Google Doc is amazing, right? Because you can just get up to it from your phone, you can get to it, or using notes on your phone or your computer, and just jotting things down when you think of it. Like, oh, well, just thought about this that happened to me. Let me just put a sentence down so that when I'm starting to write my essay, I can read over that sentence. Maybe I can make that into a complete statement, or maybe it's just 2 sentences, 3 sentences that I want to add. So just putting everything you can think of down, and these are some phenomenal questions, Deb.
And I would also just add that, again, that piece of where it takes time, trying to do this overnight, you're not going to get that depth of thought or sort of that really comprehensive view of your sort of experience. And so taking some time to really just do those bullet points, to do those notes. A lot of people do their best thinking in the shower. When you hop out of the shower, put some notes in your phone.
Yes.
So trying to do all of this at once is just not going to lend to the depth that we're really looking for.
I love this piece of advice. The personal statement is not about the stuff that you've done. And that's a hard thing to think about, because so many of you have said, well, I've done all of these things and I want the college office to know, and they will, right? Because, and I wish I had a visual right now, but what happens in the college application, the list of all of your activities, so all of the great things that you've done, be it working at Publix or Chick-fil-A or at Nike or wherever you may have worked, working at food banks, volunteering at food banks, being student government president, being captain of any sports team, or being the lead actress, all of that is on your application. And so the college officers, we see that. The very next thing is your personal statement. And so if you waste the space to write your personal statement of just writing what we just saw in narrative form, you've missed a huge opportunity. So if you've mentioned that you've been on the student government, or you are on your school's honor council or FBLA or whatever else you've done, which are all amazing things, you do not have to write an entire essay to expand those activities, because we can see it. So it's not about what you've done, it's about who you are as a person, your character traits, your personality, what makes you you. And the things that you've done are amazing, but it's not your true character. It's not what makes you a wonderful, unique individual. It's just things that, because you're a wonderful, unique individual, you've done these great things. And so please do not, as someone who reads thousands of essays, not write your list of activity in narrative form and then making that your essay. You've wasted a wonderful opportunity to let me know about you as a person.
Yeah, and I think that piece about, thinking about what are your core values, what are those, and where did they come from? I mean, that's a really key ingredient in sort of the kinds of things that you can think about in the essay and about who you are. And again, they want to know what kind of person you're going to be when you step on campus. And so the activities is going to give them a sense of the kinds of things you might do when you join on campus, but not the person that you'll be. And so I think that's a real distinction that's really important. So this is, again, sort of looking at that blank page, the kinds of things that you want to think about. What are those core values that really matter to you? What are those distinctive traits about you that are really interesting? One of my students is working on an essay right now, and she's just, every time I meet with her, she's just hilarious. She makes me laugh, and her essay just makes me laugh out loud. And it's perfect because that's who she is. She's just naturally dryly funny. And she tells a story about destroying muffins, trying to make vegan muffins for her sister. And it's just an absolute disaster. And it's so much her, because humor is how she approaches a lot of things in life. Making sure that the essay flows. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, sort of the structure of the essay. But I think that last question, I know, Sarbeth, you can talk about this as well. Is the admissions counselor going to be able to clearly articulate the student's passion? And one of the things I've heard, admissions officers talk about is that they'll share essays with each other and say, have you read this student who, and they won't necessarily use the student's name, but have you read the student who wrote about baking the vegan muffins? Or have you read the student? Because it's that sort of experience and that sort of quality of the student that comes across that they want to share with others.
Absolutely. And the being able to clearly read the essay is so important. And that's why you need the time to sit down. And I would always tell my students, read it out loud. Does it make sense? Does it flow? Because you are using a lot of time to write essays. So you may be in different headspaces when you write one sentence or one paragraph, and it may not flow. But also, I would tell my students and people I advise, and when I'm reading essay, about every 3 sentences, what is the admissions officer finding out about you? And if the answer is nothing new, then those 3 sentences may not be needed. And so you want to make sure that, okay, while I'm writing, dump everything on, but then when you're editing, okay, why did I go from step A to step C? I left out step B. Okay, can the admissions officer clearly get from A to C without B? And if the answer is yes, then B may not be needed. But if the answer is no, unless they know you, then you want to go back and make sure that they're reading it clearly, because as much as we love every single applicant that we're reading, knowing that there is limited time to read the essays, we can't read it as an English teacher, like you would read it several times and say, okay, this is what they're trying to say, because we have to read the essays and keep a moving pace. So if it's not clearly flowing, wonderful things you may want to let us know we may not get in the essay, and so we're like, we don't know what they're trying to say. We're not going to pick up the phone and ask you to dissect your essay. So making sure that it clearly flows and we get a sense of who you are, that's the important part of the essay.
Absolutely. And I think yes, this is one of my favorite slides. Sarbeth, do you want to talk about the clown car?
Absolutely. This is something I've been saying for over 15 years, and probably the same slide. Your essay is not a clown car. And what I mean by that is you have lived wonderful lives or have stories to tell us, and you're like, oh, I could tell them about A, B, and C. But in 650 words, and we usually use 650 words because the majority of college essays, personal statements, their main one is about 650 words, which isn't a lot. So you do have to pick one topic and stick with it. You can't talk about, okay, I'm going to talk about the soup kitchen experience here, and then I'm going to talk about playing softball here, and then I'm going to talk about working at Chick-fil-A here, and then I'm going to, you don't have that that much space unless you're tying it all together with a bow, talking about transferable skills that can easily flow. Pick one topic and stick with it. The great thing with your college application, there's other opportunities for you to let us know other smaller details about you. Like Deb says, some colleges will have interviews, but don't feel like you need to give us 10 topics in less than 600 words, because again, it's going to be choppy and it's not going to flow.
Yeah. And I would say the first draft, again, those brain dumps, if you think about that lump of clay, or those can be the clown car, and they might actually literally look a little bit like this. Yeah. The key is to really pare those down over the course of, revising and editing your essays. So yeah, I think that image is so great. So this is really, and I think this speaks exactly to what Sarbeth was talking about in terms of how colleges read your application. So there are sort of, there's data that they're going to get, which are the numbers about you. Colleges get lots and lots of numbers about you. And so that's lots of your GPA, your core GPA, your scores, your AP scores, the quality of courses that you've taken, the rigor of courses that you've taken, your grades. That's really the hard data that they're going to get. The bigger application, the holistic review, if you haven't been around the college application process yet very much, you're going to hear a lot. Holistic review. If you go on college tours, you're going to hear we do a holistic review. And that's really when they're looking at all of the pieces of your application. And so that's the quantitative pieces, it's the numbers, and as well, it's the qualitative pieces. So that's your activities. What kinds of things do you do outside of school? Do you engage with your community? What does that look like? What does your essay say about you? Who are you going to be when you come on campus? What do your teachers say about you? What does your counselor say about you? So that's really, there's kind of two parts to your application. And so understanding that it's not just one or the other. I think sometimes, students are forever panicking about their GPA or their one SAT score. And I'm like, it's not just one. It's never just the one thing. It's always this holistic view of who you are. And the essay really is kind of the piece of the puzzle that is the person behind all of those numbers. It's the human being part of the application, I think.
Yes, and what I love about this slide is how it splits it up, right? And so even though as an admissions officer, I will see everything, I will see your transcript, I'll see your SAT and ACT score if a college is requiring those. If they're not, then I won't see them. I will see how many APs, and look at that in the context of your environment, right? So if you go to, I know we have someone registered from Westlake High School, which is around the corner from me. If you go to Westlake High School, I'm not going to compare the number of APs you're taking to someone who goes to North Atlanta High School or Midtown High School. I'm going to look at it and say at Westlake, that the student take advantage of the opportunities there. Looking at your essay, that's not where you should write and say, let me tell you about Westlake High School, or let me tell you about North Atlanta High School, because luckily as an admissions officer, your high school guidance counseling office or career service office, or there's lots of different office names out there, but we will get profiles to explain to us about your high school. So you don't have to do that piece. And so really thinking about your letters of recommendation, that's how other people view you, but your essay is how I can truly find out who you are as a person. Everything else, the GPAs, test scores, that's number driven. The letters of recommendation is an outside view of you, but your essay is when I can really hear your voice come through. And that's what I'm looking for when I'm reading an application, your voice.
Do you want to talk about this slide to start us off?
Absolutely. So essays, and this is great because it is about your voice, right? And so essays are typically the highest ranked for colleges that, and I've mentioned I've worked at several different colleges. Some colleges will give numeric numbers to each part of your application, and essays I've seen have been the highest ranked, or the part that really gives that admissions officer who's reading your application a piece of your personality to come to the admissions committee and say, I love this student because they wrote about trying to help their sister eat, these vegan cupcakes, even though she loves non-vegan food. And so I feel like I know you. And so that is the part. And there's a lot of people a lot of colleges who are doing joint reads now. And so one person will be responsible for reading your letters of recommendation and your personal statements, and their partner will look at your SAT and ACT and number of APs in your GPA. And so as a team, they decide how your application will benefit their college. And so your essays, personal statement is truly the only place where you have complete control of that voice. You have complete control of the admissions committee knowing exactly what you want us to hear about you. And so, yes.
Yes. And I think students, sometimes panic about that sense of control because it's not a 5-paragraph essay, right? A student told me that today. She said, I'm used to writing. She's like, if you told me to write about Hamlet, I'm good.
Absolutely.
But it's not that structure. And so sometimes there can be that panic about that having control over it. But that's the beauty, I think, in the long run, is that it's yours. Like no one can, people can make suggestions about the grammar and the structure, but your story is yours. And kind of own that is really exciting.
Yes. And that's the piece, and I'm jumping straight to the last one because working with students who will say, hey, will you read it as an English teacher? And will mom, dad, grandma, uncle, aunt, will you read it? And best friend down the street, will you read it? And everyone has their opinions, right? Oh, I think you should move this here, and I think you should do this. And your voice as a student is lost, completely lost. And it's like when you hear, as a student, when your friend texts you, if it's them texting you or if it's somebody else texting you, right? Because it's like, hey, they don't use that word. I know this. I was gonna go off on a tangent about. I just looked at a Britney documentary, and we're talking about the difference between she never uses emoticons, but only emojis, right? And so it's one of those that look at way too many documentaries. Those, if it's not your voice. So I always advise students, you may want to give it to an English teacher or someone who you trust their grammar and say, will you read this for grammatical reasons, right? And you may give it to someone who doesn't know you that well, a teacher that you trust, and say, hey, when you read this, what type of student would you think I am? Because as a parent, if I'm reading my daughter's essay, I know what she's trying to write. I know who she is. So sometimes there's danger of someone too close reading your essay. And I cannot stress that last part enough about your voice. Don't go pick up a thesaurus and say, my day. If you don't use those words, then don't use them. If you use the words like say, hey, this is trash, You might want to clean that up in the essay, but you could put it in quotation as, a phrase I commonly use, this is trash. Like, I want to hear the student's voice. I have, and Deb, I'm sure this has never happened to you, and luckily I've worked at over 5 different institutions where I will read an essay and I will tell the student, I know you did not write this sentence.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And they say, no, that was my dad. I'm like, yes, if I can get that,
Yep.
the college office will get that as well.
Yep.
So thank people for the suggestions, be kind, but this is my essay, this is my voice. And so you're asking people to read your essay to make sure that your message is coming across, but it may not come across in the same verbiage that they use, and that's okay. But if they get the message, that's what they're looking for.
Yes. If I'm reading an essay and it suddenly sounds like a 35 or 40-year-old woman has written it, and I don't know how I could define how I know that, but man, it sticks out like a sore thumb. And that's when my students will say, oh yeah, my mom decided that would be a good sentence. And I'm like, we love your mom, but we're going to take the sentence out. So.
Absolutely. Yes.
Let me just see. There we go. So I'll just talk about sort of, we've talked about the colleges want to know, who are you? Why should they pick you? What are you going to bring to the school? The other thing I think we'll address a little bit of this at the end as well, is that there are 2 separate kinds of essays generally for your application. So the first essay, which is typically called your main essay, that's kind of the bigger one. It's the 600, usually about the max of 650 words. We're going to show you the Common App essay prompts in a minute. And this is really the life story. This is who you are. This is the me essay. The supplemental essay. So every college also very often has its own smaller essays. Those are usually about 250 words. I think students are often surprised by those essays. They don't know that they're coming. And so knowing ahead of time to look for those is really helpful. The common application opens on August 1st. And after August 1st, that's when you can really see most of those supplemental essays. That question is often, why do you want to go to this college? Why? And we're going to address, sort of thinking about how to approach that question in a little bit. So there are 2 separate kinds of essays, and they are different kinds of approaches as well. So
the personal statement, it's great, right? Because it's the story of you, and that's the hardest part. Like Deb mentioned earlier, if someone's like, "Hey, write about Hamlet," I can go read Hamlet, look at a movie, look at some notes, ask my friends. I can write an essay because I have research. But it's the part of writing about you as an individual. And I know we have students who are in the 9th grade with us today, which is great, right? Because you might want to start jotting down little anecdotes and things that happen. And if you're going into your senior year, that's plenty of time as well. So don't feel that you're behind or panic, because you're not. But those personal anecdotes, life lessons that you learned, and it doesn't, and we'll show you some examples in a moment, so don't feel like, well, what have I learned? There was this funny episode of Modern Family, and again, you can hear that I'm in front of my TV too much, but Modern Family, and it was when the oldest daughter was applying to college, and she was like, nothing has ever happened to me. So her mom, Claire, puts her in the car and drives around and is just going to talk to her, drives to the top of a mountain in California, and then pushes her out the car and it's like, there's your college essay, and leaves. You don't have to get stuck on to write a college essay. And so it can be something that when you're thinking about it, like, oh, that's small, a college won't want to know about that. That's what we want to know about. That's exactly what I want to know about when I'm reading your application.
Yeah, I always tell my students, I say, you do not need to have rescued like a dog that fell down a well. Like, it does not have to be you lifted a bus off of, an elderly woman. Though it can be something tiny, can actually be the most powerful story.
Absolutely.
And then these are the common essay prompts. So you can find these in the common essay, in the common app. These are the common app essay prompts. So there's a new one this year. Number 4 is new, which is reflect on something that someone has done for you that has made you happy or thankful in a surprising way. How has this gratitude affected or motivated you? I really love this new question.
Yes.
But I think if you sort of take a look at what the things that I highlighted in red here, it's really, so it's lessons, it's beliefs, it's things that have made you thankful, it's realizations, it's all of these sort of, it's not necessarily tell us what is the #1 award that you won for biology. That's not what these questions are. What things does your brain find engaging? What makes you lose track of time? So it's really, these are experiential questions. And I think that is really important to see. And again, these are in the Common App. The 4th one is not in the Common App yet. It will be once the rollover happens after August 1st, but it's the new question that they introduced this year. And I think it's a beautiful question.
And one thing I will say is that we keep using Common App because a lot of people use the Common application, but there's the Coalition application, there's the HBCU, which is the Historically Black College and University application. There is QuestBridge. There's a lot of different applications. What I would say is before you decide, okay, here's the topic, I'm going to flush it out. And if you know you're applying to QuestBridge and some Common App schools and maybe a Coalition school and an HBCU school, and you're like, whoa, number 3, prompt 3 is a prompt on all 4 of those platforms. And I was torn between prompt 3 and 4, go with prompt 3, right? And use that app essay for all the different platforms, because the main essay will go out to all the different colleges. It's the supplemental essays that are very college specific that you can't interchange those, but the main one you can. So if you know you're applying to a couple of different colleges that don't all use the Common application, look and see what their prompts are first to see, okay, where's the overlap? Because there's always overlap.
And the Common App and the Coalition also both have the lovely question, which is kind of number 7. I think it's number 5 for the Coalition, which is share an essay on a topic of your choice, which is the lovely catch-all. And a lot of times many students will start writing about number 1 and number 5 sneaks in. And so that number 7 or that number 5 is also really, really handy. We love that sort of catch-all question as well.
The catch-all question, the one thing I'll say about that is it still needs to be a personal statement. That is not a catch-all where you're like, great, I can use my Hamlet paper. Yes. Don't do that. Don't do that, because it'll be about you. Yes.
Unless you see yourself in Hamlet and you talk about that somehow.
That is true.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about these, Sarbeth, or do you want me to handle this one?
Sure. So when you're looking at your essay, your main essay, and I'm old, and so I will say that, but what I used to love, and when I read college essays, I think of them as the old people's court. Remember that when they would say, this is the case about the person who stole the dog leash off the fence. Like it, and so that's how I look at the essays. And it was great that when you were like, this is the essay about the vegan muffin. That will stick in my head. This is the essay about. And so what is your story? The story is always about you, but what the context of who you are? What is that hook? What is that standing out in your essay where I feel like, okay, this is Joshua's essay. I feel that I know him. He wrote a story about X, Y, and Z all in one. So let's just say X, because I don't want you to write 3 different topics. So that context, that hook is very important. Why does this mean a lot to you? Something that we will say is, and I tore my ACL. Most painful, I'm a mother. Tearing my ACL was the most pain I have ever been in my life. It was like, I want to cry when I think about how painful that was. And a lot of people have, well, sadly, a lot of people have torn their ACL.
A lot of students, yeah.
Yes, it is painful. Trust me, I feel that pain. But okay, you tore your ACL and what? Like, and so even if you have a painful moment or a moment that really stands out in your mind, the why does this mean a lot to you? If I ever wrote, which I wouldn't, but if I ever wrote another personal statement about tearing my ACL, painful. Why did that moment stand out to me? Because my best friend who was at work, got off of work to drive and come get me off the ground because I could not move. So the moment to me defines friendship, right? And so if something happened that like, oh, I tore my ACL or I'm a camp counselor, the why is this important should be the very next thing. Why doesn't admissions officer care?
Mm-hmm.
What lesson did I learn from that? And that's why I never say there's a bad topic.
Right.
It's just topics that students don't do that next dive into of why does this mean a lot to you as a person, and how have you grown? What did you learn from that?
Yeah. And without the why behind it, my students actually get really tired, I think, of me asking them why all the time. But you know, why do we care? Why should I care?
Why do we care?
And if it matters to you, it is going to show that it matters in the essay. If you have learned something and you are really passionate about what you learned about, that's going to come up in the essay because it's authentically yours. And again, yeah, I mean, I had, you know, concussions, or actually I've had a lot of students who have a lot of concussions. Terrible. I'm really sad that happened. What came out of it? What happened later? And why, you know, what did you learn about yourself and other people and how you relate to them?
Absolutely. So this is the fun part. This has been fun, but this is the fun part where you all get to read and see some of the different essays that over the years, and most of them are very recent actually. Why did this stand out? And so this is a beginning of an essay that a student wrote. And what was great about this essay is that it's something that a lot of students can write about, of parents being divorced. I think what really stood out about this essay is that, and again, this is just the beginning, it's not the overall essay, but it's talking about how they realized that no one had died, right? It's just a divorce and everything would be okay. But then realizing, no, it's not okay. And they go into what they learned about themselves through their parents' divorce and the maturity and the growth that happened. And that's why this was an essay that really stood out, because they set the scene. I feel like I'm right beside this student. I'm like, okay, I'm in Savannah, it's hot, okay, I'm learning. And then I'm going through the emotions and learning who this student is through their essay.
I also just love structurally. So this is something that I think panics students again. It does not look like a 5-paragraph essay. There was no thesis at the end of the first paragraph. There's a sentence that's just sitting out there by itself. It's only 3 words and it's just sitting there. It's not connected to anything else. But that structure of that essay is really powerful in and of itself. And using paragraph spacing can also be really impactful. And I think for students, just having that willingness to be like, okay, there's no thesis statement and there's no paragraph that goes with this, that is totally okay. And it's really, think about how that essay flows, right? If you think about when you were talking about how essays flow, this flows to that 3 words that are incredibly powerful, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is another one, you know, but this is one of the things I think is important to talk about. So very often students write about grandparents, and I love grandparents. I got to live with my great-grandmother for many years. She was bonkers and awesome. And I think it is absolutely great to talk about other people in your life. the key ingredient is that they are not applying to college.
Right.
So that the danger I think that sometimes can happen in essays is that people write so much about grandpa that you get a really wonderful sense of grandpa. And he seems like an amazing human being. Grandpa, however, has already gone to college or did not go to college but he's not the one applying to go to college right now. And so ensuring that when you talk about someone else, that you shift gears so that you're talking about what you learned from them, what the experience with them taught you, because grandpa is not coming with you to the dorm. The college admissions office really wants to see who you are going to be on campus. So I think this is a great example because it shows us we can talk about people who are important in our lives. We can talk about family members, but we want to make sure that the focus still really resounds back to you. So
yes. And I have countless times like, oh, the student that they wrote about their best friend, they seem awesome. Are they applying? Can we find them? Because that's who we want in the pool. Yes. So bring it back to you.
Yeah. And these are just some really great starts. And Sarbeth, you these are just so fantastic. I want to pick with this one. This is so great.
Yeah, so this is one, and this is almost like I was talking about the ACL, right? There's nothing horrible about any topic. So if someone's like, oh, don't write about this, you can write about any topic. Some are generic if you don't write about them well. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of colleges, and this is one that I got off of Davidson College's website. Emory has a blog. Georgia Tech posts a lot of essay thoughts. There's a lot of essays out there. What I will say is please don't use them as a template. I'm not posting them saying this is exactly how your essay should look. In fact, I'm showing you very different examples. And so this one is great because I'm like, wait, what? Did this person get struck by lightning? What's going on? So I'm reading it because I want to know the next part. And so what, again, is someone who looks at a lot of movies, and I have Disney Plus. And so when they were talking about their hand not being able to use it anymore, of course, I went to Dr. Strange and I was like, oh, what's going to happen to this student? And so they write about how that lightning changed them. And this essay goes on to talk about how they had to shift, right? They had to pivot. They no longer could do the perfect jump shot and the spot playing on the football team and the dream of being a surgeon was over. But then where can their life go from there? And that's why this essay was so gripping that you want to read the rest of it. Mm-hmm. It's the important part.
It's really good. And again, don't be afraid. I think, kids have that fear of asking a question in an essay because they're told in English class, never ask a question. Like you're just telling facts and you're just analyzing. It's okay to ask questions. If you answer them, make sure you answer them. Yeah, I love this essay start as well. This one is really wonderful in terms of the towering stacks of sticky mats, wiping up countless unidentified liquids and fighting a futile war against spilled glitter. That's that really fantastic, just you can imagine it. It's really tactile. It's really appealing to the senses. The description is really perfect. And if you've ever worked anywhere near a summer camp or children, this just brings back really visceral memories of just being sticky all the time. And so I love that piece of this as well. It's just, don't be afraid to be descriptive. That's totally okay in these kinds of essays as well.
Yes. And I love that they started this one with, like a lot of students, I didn't cure cancer, world peace, endangered species. Honestly, just cleaning up after students and kids at a summer camp.
Yeah.
It's great. And that's a student the student who says, hey, I just want to live in the moment. Mm-hmm. That's and I want on my college campus who will live in the moment, who will add to our environment because they're present, mm-hmm. and not someone who is like, oh, well, I need to win the next Nobel Peace Prize, which you can do, but being in that moment is what's so important.
Absolutely. And then do you want to talk about this one, I think, Sarbeth?
Oh, sure. So this one was important, or it stood out because it talked about how students sometimes just how they've grown. This student is talking about how they are no longer fearful to talk about their memories of being in the Middle East and the pride that they have around who they are as an individual. And that is something that we want to see if you have it to write about that growth.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone who says, hey, I used to be, apprehensive to talk about who I am as a person, or my background, my cultural background, but I'm no longer afraid to do that, and I'm embracing it. That not only speaks to your growth, it shows me how you will help the community grow. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I could learn from you just in a sentence. I could learn from you just by you saying, hey, do you want to go to this cultural event with me? And I'm like, well, I've never even heard of it. Sure, let's go. And so, and that student, this essay is talking about the potential future growth. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're looking for. And sometimes it is, you may not be at your final destination, but we know that you're on a path. Mm-hmm. And that's the path we want to see where that path will lead you. Mm-hmm. And so things like this really show us that.
Yeah, I think too, sometimes students worry, that they don't have it all together when they're, they see sometimes their peers seem to have it all together. And you're 17 or 18, it's okay. You do not have to have it all together. And being open to the world and showing that you're going to embrace all those possibilities, I think is really wonderful. So we'll talk a little bit about the supplemental essays now. So again, this is one of the things I think surprises students when they start into the college application process, because they know usually that there's an essay, a big one that they have to write. They get super surprised when they look at the college specific portions of the applications and they see that they have to write more essays. So you can see those in, again, Common App, Coalition, wherever it is that you're looking. You can see those application questions. Many colleges ask the question, why do you want to go here? Why do you want to attend this institution? I think the most important thing to say about this is these should not be interchangeable at all. So you should not be able to take an essay that you wrote for one college and transfer it to another college. They should be so institution specific that you couldn't possibly mean anywhere else except this one college. So doing your research, doing your homework is really important. The key, I think, and Sarbeth, you and I talked about this the other day, is also not to just repeat back to the university what you read on the university website. So I live in North Carolina, and many students apply to both UNCW, UNC Wilmington, and App State. So UNCW is at the beach, and App State is in the mountains. And students will often they want to talk about, the beach is really beautiful. And I remind them that A, UNCW is actually not on the beach, and B, the people who work there in the admissions office, they live in Wilmington. They know that the beach is there. You don't need to tell them that the beach is there. Why do you want to go to that institution? What do you want to study? What courses look really cool? What professors are doing interesting work? What programs have you looked into? What cool things does that college have that you are going to embrace when you get there? And again, that's why none of these should be interchangeable, because none of the colleges offer the same thing. And so what we'll look at now, so Sarbeth, you can talk about this, let me see if I can get it to scooch over. So this is that first Wellesley essay, and then we'll look at the second one.
Yes, so, and exactly what Deb was saying, and my internet's a little unstable because there's a storm coming through this part of right now. So if I go LA,
all good.
Okay. But this is a complete Why Wellesley essay that a student wrote a few years back. And just like Deb said, it's a great essay, but I can take Wellesley out and add Barnard. I can take Wellesley out and add Spelman. I could take it out and add Agnes Scott. I can add any all-women school because it doesn't give me the specifics of why Wellesley, right? It's giving me the specifics of why a smaller women's college. And so you want the specifics. And what I'll also say about that is when you're writing about the college, be mindful, and Deb mentioned this, I've seen students write about, oh, I want NYU because it's in the city and New York is great and New York is lights and New York, New York, New York. Well, that's why you want to move to New York. That's not why you want NYU. And so you can always mention the location, but that should not be the crux of your essay. Okay, well, you want to move to New York City. That's great.
You can
and so, yeah, it's great. I'll convince it all the time. So if you look at this essay, it's a great essay, but it's no specifics. And so we look at take 2, when the student wrote the essay, and I would tell students, when I'm helping you, if you're writing about a college, a Y college, and I don't know all what you're saying, that's perfect. Because I have no clue what ES 300 group project is. The students at Wellesley, they know, and the people working at Wellesley know. So they know that you've done the research. They know that you've looked at this professor, whoever, who does this study abroad program. And so really looking at, that's when your research comes into play. When we were talking about earlier, looking at the individual college, if you're taking a tour, if you listen to an info session and you say, well, Miss Fleming mentioned this about X institution, I'm like, look at them, they paid attention. And so knowing your tour guide's name, and if you forgot them, don't worry about it. But the more specific details about that individual college, the more I know the student truly is looking at that individual college.
Absolutely. So I think, this is kind of our final thoughts. I can't get to the question and answer. Are there any questions answered or Q&A, anything in the chat?
There are none. I think we got it.
Oh, that's so good. Well, final thoughts, Sarbeth, that you have at all on just this topic in general?
Fun with the funnel, with your personal statement. Know that there is not a perfect personal statement. I can read a book and think it's trash. Someone else can read it and think it's the best thing ever written. And that's okay, because the author wanted that on the paper. So don't write your personal statement thinking I need to please this individual. You're writing your personal statement to tell us who you are as a person. And so pick a topic, but always think of what is the reader learning about me and why did I pick this topic? Is this a topic that they are going to say, yes, I know more about Deb. I know more about Naomi. I know more about whoever's writing. I feel like I want to meet this individual. And when I meet them, I feel that I'm going to know a small part of them, but enough that I want to know what else they have to offer. And that's why I'm going to admit them to come to my college, because I'm intrigued and I want to see and I want to be part of their journey.
Yeah. And I would say too, I think we talked about this a lot, but if you're a rising senior right now, get started now. It doesn't have to be perfect yet. You've got time. And I think it's important sometimes as well to let things sit. I think it's really important to, work on it for a while. Even when you get to the point where you think I've got a final version, let it sit for a little while and then come back to it with fresh eyes. I think that can really show you some things sometimes. I remember when I was in college, I had to write a thesis. Everyone at my university had to write a thesis. And I got to the point by the time I was done with it that I didn't even know what it was about anymore. You could have stuck the Gettysburg Address in the middle of it and I wouldn't have had no idea. Taking a break from it, I took a week off. Mostly because I was like, I can't even look at this thing anymore. But coming back to it with fresh eyes can be really important. And then the final thing I would say too is reading it aloud or having someone else read it aloud to you is a really powerful moment, because it is a very different feeling, hearing it, then seeing it. And I actually,
Yes.
one of the very last things I do with my students is I make them, they close their eyes and I read their essay to them. I usually end up crying because it's been a journey working on it with them. And, but hearing it, you also catch things that don't make sense.
Yes.
Hearing it, you also see where there should be pauses that there aren't, or that something needs to be added or something needs to be taken out. So I would say taking your time, giving it time to simmer, make a really great soup, and then hearing it at the very end can be really, really great as well. So,
Absolutely.
awesome.
Well, thank you so much. Everyone who's here, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this is helpful. I hope that you don't have any fear about the personal statement, because whatever topic you choose to write about is going to be amazing, because it's going to be about you. But this will be live. I mean, this will be recorded. Know that we have other mini camp college sessions that are coming up. The value of a liberal arts college, which is great. Please join that. A lot of people think, oh, I want to major in engineering, so I can't go to a liberal arts college. That's completely wrong. And so we have that. We have extracurricular activities and how they're going to play into your college process. So there's several different sessions that we've already had some, and so those are recorded on SACAC's website and on SACAC's YouTube channel. So again, thank you so much. If you ever have questions, always feel free to ask, because the admissions college representatives, professionals are here to help you. It's all about, and that's why we call it admissions. We want to admit you. And so thank you so much. Thank you, Deb. Everyone have a great night.
Stay safe, everyone. Thank you so much.